What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Tonight we're going to be welcome to the circle. Tonight we are going to be discussing what is metaphysics. So far we've got Uriah with us, main contributor tonight. I think hopefully Luke will join us soon. So Uriah, why don't you go ahead and start us off with the topic?
Okay, yeah, the topic is what is metaphysics, and the idea of metaphysics goes way back to Plato. But basically, It's basically the way it was previous back then. It was the philosophy that followed from the physical or the natural philosophy that they were doing at the time.
Okay.
In a more modern and broader context, it's basically answering the questions of what there is and what it's like.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Like saying my dog exists, right? And the way it's and what it's like is it's furry, he's noisy when he barks, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then so that's one way to describe it, is saying that it's basically what there is and what it's like. The way I actually prefer to describe it is that is by breaking up the root words, where meta is self-referential, and then the self-referential references itself, and physics being the study of the physical world.
Okie dokie.
So, just like how metadata is data about data, we can say metaphysics is physics about physics. And
makes sense to me, but physics about physics.
Right. Yeah. The way I've read a few ways of doing that is basically how Quine talks about that what our metaphysics should be is is what we can infer from our best proven theories or best working theories.
Okay.
So, how can I say it? Let me think out of a way to describe it. Basically, in a technical sense like that, the books that Lawrence Krauss or Stephen Hawking write for the public, right? When they make these inferences based on the data, those are basically books of metaphysics. So inferences from the physics. Another way to describe it is the act of hypothesizing, where pretty much if such and such exists or is true, then doing this action will give us this result. Because what we're doing is we're taking what we know and inferring past that.
All right, that makes sense.
So now, a lot of people there's things like the Secret and all that other woo stuff that try to put metaphysics on this, like it's almost as if they're trying to keep metaphysics some sort of mystic thing where they put like all their invisible stuff that they want to have exist.
I just got a message from Luke saying he's not going to be available, so tonight's going to be a shorter episode. But I'm going to learn something here about metaphysics.
Okay. So, yeah, usually you see this with religion a lot, is that they try to start with the metaphysics, right? So they put God and how you made the world and all that stuff. They put that first, and then try to tie it into what we're actually witnessing now. They're basically doing metaphysics backwards.
Okay, I see.
So, and then, but they, metaphysics when it was when they were finding they were digging up Plato's old stuff, right? He had several different books, and the first one was the book of physics, or the study of the physical world, natural world, and then there was the metaphysics, which is the philosophy that you tackle after you've learned the philosophy of the physics, or natural philosophy. So, I mean, a good example from Plato's day would be, first he would look at all these things and see that, well, that's there. So there's this chair, and this chair has some chairness to it, right? It's got certain properties. You can sit in it. You can be comfortable in it. It's shaped a certain way. So he postulated that since all there can be many different chairs, there should be at least one chair that perfectly matches all that, and that's kind of how he came up with the metaphysic of having a Platonic realm, where abstractions exist in some place beyond time and space, and that everything in the world is trying to reach that perfect state and trying to copy that perfect state, but because it's an imperfect world, it can't do it right. That's why all the trees look different. That's why chairs are manufactured in different shapes. People have different things. That was his kind of metaphysic at the time. So, but he wouldn't be able to. And like, for example, if you're looking at the idea of the Platonic forms, you can't find those Platonic forms on your own. You actually have to look at the physical around you, and infer the realm of forms from that.
So, wait, explain that again, that last part.
So basically, Plato's metaphysic, right, was that there's this realm of forms. Okay, we can't find an actual perfect triangle in the world, because all the triangles are in this world are imperfect, trying to match the perfect triangle in the realm of forms. So, but you can't just directly interact with the realm of forms. So you have to look at the physical around you, and then make inferences that would lead to that.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the only thing that I would have, one of the biggest things that I see where I find that what a lot of people it just doesn't seem to make sense to me is when they come up with like a supernatural metaphysic from looking at the physical. To me, it seems like a non sequitur because it's basically like the first premise is going to be physical. The second premise is going to be physical or natural. How do we get a supernatural conclusion? So I see supernatural metaphysics just to be a big non sequitur.
Yeah, that makes sense. With no proper lead up into supernatural. It's just like hopping into it.
Now, another way to describe another thing about metaphysics is that it covers a lot of ground. I remember what William James, he basically was saying that the idea of pragmatism was a way of settling metaphysical disputes among philosophers, and the way he suggested was that
pragmatism, pragmatism, and that is like what?
William James said pragmatism was a method for settling metaphysical disputes.
Yeah, I mean, what is pragmatism though? I forget.
Pragmatism is a branch of philosophy that started in America, and it basically is it looks at the disconnects between the from the idealists, right, and the empiricists, because we had the rationalists or the idealists on one side, and then the imperialists on the other side, where one says we learn everything by inference alone and through axioms, inferences, and things like that, while the other one says no, we come to truth through the empire of our senses. So William James saw a big contention between the two. Like, one tended to be more religious, and the other tended to be more deist or atheistic back then. So one has no problem with basically just assuming things to be true, and then coming to a conclusion, while the other one says, well, we can't even assume something to be true until we've experienced it. So
yeah, I've been on both sides of the matter. I've been a theist. I was a theist, since I was little, till just about 5 or 6 years ago. So I've been on both sides of that fence. I'm starting to understand that whole process of needing evidence for beliefs. It's crazy. I went through crazy phases after I stopped a specific church. I believed in auras and all that crap for a little while. Just grew out of it. A wild journey, man.
yeah. Well, pragmatism tries to straddle both sides of the fence, as far as like the rationalist and the empiricist camps. Tries to sit up on top of those, and basically the way pragmatism is used in settling metaphysical disputes, right, is through the utility of the metaphysical belief. Basically, what we're talking about has to do with how we're defining certain things when we're discussing them. The example that he gives, right, in his lectures on pragmatism, there was two groups of philosophers on a field trip, philosophy students on a field trip, and they saw a squirrel on a tree, right? And then one of the people was trying to get a good look at the squirrel. So every time the guy went around the tree, the squirrel would sit there and would also go around the tree, keeping his stomach facing the same way, the same direction on the tree. So the question is, did that person go around the squirrel, or did he not go around the squirrel? So, okay. So imagine you're on one side of a tree, and the squirrel's on the tree on the other side of the tree. So while you're turning to try to get a better look, it's always moving away from you around the tree with its stomach facing you, with the chest facing you.
Okay, so in the same direction, basically.
Right. So basically, if there was no tree there, you'd always be looking at each other eye to eye.
Okie dokie.
So the big argument was did the person go around the squirrel?
Did the person go around the squirrel?
Right. So the way William James proposed of settling that dispute, that metaphysical dispute, was to say, well, it depends on what the practical meaning of the terms go around. So if you say going around means going in front of, to the side of, behind of, and to the side of the other side of the squirrel, then no, you did not go around it. However, if what you mean by go around is to go to the north of the squirrel, to the east of the squirrel, to the south of the squirrel, and then to the west of the squirrel, then yes, you did go around. So the idea, the proper metaphysical way of looking at the scenario really depends on what you mean by go around and how that meaning is utilized in the real world.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and it's what happens is that that's the first example William James gives in one of his lectures about how it settles metaphysical disputes. The idea comes from the pragmatic maxim, which I usually phrase it as the whole of a conception, right, is the belief and its practical application, or the practical consequences of acting on that belief.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right, because, and then the way I go about it is that every belief, right, should have a practical consequence. So if you believe in belief B, and that's true, then committing action A should produce the result R. And
Right.
then if committing action A fails to result in R, then that metaphysical belief is false. Because logically, it's just a contrapositive of the other.
Okay. I can see that.
So that's basically what it was. So for any belief, there's a practical consequence. The way you settle the metaphysical disputes, right, is first by being clear with your language and making sure that when you're using certain terms, there's no ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
And second, want to compare the actual results from testing to the expected results of testing. So let's say if I mix two chemicals, I predict that they'll turn blue, right? When I mix them. Well, if I mix them and it comes out red, obviously my belief that mixing the two would turn blue is false.
Yeah, it's false.
Now another way that I explain it is that your beliefs are like a map to reality. Okay, we form beliefs to try to simulate what the actual metaphysic is that's encroaching upon us. So facts from sense data just impose themselves on us all the time. So we form beliefs from our brains interpreting the data, and we have this, and that's what causes us to have things that we see when you feel pain, things like that. So you're basically, your belief is like a map to the world, the external world.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Now, when you have an inaccurate map, right, you will eventually fail to reach a desired destination if it's not accurate.
Right.
Same with beliefs. Okay. If your belief is not true, eventually acting on that belief will produce unwanted consequences or unpredicted consequences. And so, where was that? Consequence. Where was I? I lost my train of thought.
Acting on a belief that's false will have unwanted consequences or unforeseen consequences.
Right, and it may not happen every time, because it is possible to get the desired result from a true belief and a false belief. But the false belief it's only the false belief that would ever fail in getting those predicted results.
Right, that makes sense.
So now this also has to, if you think about it, this also goes into lack of data, right? And then also the idea of unfalsifiable claims. What ends up happening is that unfalsifiable claims and ideas that have no data to support it are then considered to be false.
Right. Naturally.
Right. So, for example, if you're trying to go from LA to San Diego, and you have an unfalsifiable map or an unfalsifiable belief, like for example, a map of Neverland, that map won't will always fail to get you to your destination. So unfalsifiable claims are necessarily false. Now, if you have no data on a specific belief, right? It's like you're trying to navigate with a blank map.
Right. Okay.
So really the reason that we have beliefs, right, is to navigate a metaphysical world that imposes facts onto our senses.
Okay, I can see this.
So and because of that, it's very important to always have your metaphysics close to what you can, only with what you can infer from your data. Because that's all you really have is the data your mind is interpreting. So
is the what?
It's the data that the mind is interpreting.
Right.
That's where the idea of solipsism comes in. What's the difference between an outside world imposing facts on us, or our minds to our minds to try to model? And that was the difference between that and you just being some entity and everything as a figment of your imagination. So the problem with hard solipsism can't really be refuted. However, under pragmatism, it's a worthless belief. There's no utility to believing that solipsism is true. Since there's no utility in it, there's really no reason to even consider it. I remember when I was reading Pragmatism by William James, if I remember correctly, he basically wanted how can I say it? Pragmatism to, when settling metaphysical disputes, to either completely get rid of the dumb things, and yet have things that can't be answered, things that don't need to be answered, things that have no utility at all. Why would we want to believe that?
Right.
So,
right.
Pragmatism is basically can be considered a form of epistemology that assigns truth values based on the utility of a belief once tested. So really, there would be no a priori truths, which would lead to an anti-foundationalist approach to philosophy.
Now, what does a priori mean again?
A priori is before the it's like assumed things that are assumed to be true prior to any argument or philosophy.
Okay.
So,
all right, that makes sense.
but when you're going through it's basically your presuppositions, your primary base assumptions, things like that, is like a priori. Now, some people want to say that that there's a priori truths, like this thing would be true, that something has to be true before you evaluate it to see if it's true. It has to actually be true. But when you really look at what true and false is, it's pretty much a property of propositions. So there can't be anything with a okay, how can I say it? There can't be any absolute truths, because truth is always in relation to the proposition and the consequences of that proposition, of acting on that proposition. So it's not absolute, because absolute means it has no relations to anything, when clearly truth has a relation to propositions. So we can't have absolute truth. And so since we can't have absolute truth, we can't really say something is true from the beginning of our inquiries. So truth is only made after that. So truth is made and not something that exists in and of itself.
Okay, that makes sense.
I was listening to some letters between William James going back and forth about how one side was say that that it had to be, that the idea had to be true, so they can do the action and get the expected consequence. However, William James was like, no, the truth is what gets you. The truth, it's what gets you from the action to the consequence, and then that becomes true. So basically, what you end up doing is you end up throwing in fallibilism as a main proponent of your of your philosophy, and you're taking out foundationalism, which would be, relying on axioms and everything like that. And a good practical example is a person crossing the street. Because no matter how good your argument is, okay, you have certain axioms that tell you it's safe to cross a road. Well, I'm sorry, you can't really argue your way out of getting hit by cars.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, and then the way this is, and of course this ties into metaphysics, because, like I said, it's a way of solving metaphysical disputes by hypothesizing and testing, and then making even more generalizations from the observed rule or observed laws that we noted, or observed regularities that we see.
Damn, this thing takes forever for me to be able to unmute myself. It's ridiculous.
It happens.
But, yeah, and whenever I'm unmuted, your mic is all horrendous. It's weird, so I've got to be muted. Yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've never taken a class on any of this stuff.
Oh, I didn't either. I just read books.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm not much of a reader.
Oh, that's fine. There, the lectures that make up the book Pragmatism by William James. It's actually in public domain, right? So you can download it from Project Gutenberg, or you can. There's actually a 6.5 hour reading of it on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
It
Damn,
goes through all the
6.5
lectures.
hours.
What's that?
6.5 hours. Damn.
Yeah, because there was like 7 lectures or something like that when he was doing that, and it's basically a transcript of his lectures.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense.
So, and then the one thing that we end up doing then is also we end up drawing a distinction between fact and that which is true. We have a distinction between those two. So a fact would be the data, the point of data that's not in dispute or is indisputable. So it's the facts just are, and it's our propositions about those facts that become true or false when we test it.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. Well, that's a lot to ponder, man.
Yeah. Did you have any questions about metaphysics in general?
Not at the moment. I think I have to really mull over everything before I can question.
Okay.
Damn, that was pretty deep. This stuff, re-soak it up.
Yeah, and what's even more interesting is that if one thing is that if you take pragmatism and these things so far, like to their logical conclusions, right? We come out with truth being more relative and subjective than objective, which some people have a really hard time accepting. So, because people often complain or conflate the idea of fact with the idea of truth.
Right, and you're saying fact and truth are two separate things. Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And because facts change, the truth value of a proposition can change. Well, the one that I use, an example I use to show the relativeness and the subjectiveness of the idea of truth is I often say you come up with this belief that if you go to the Best Buy, you could buy a Queen CD. Okay. Now here's the problem. You go there on one day, and yes, it's true. You're able to go to Best Buy and buy a Queen CD. However, the next day, you do the same you're holding the same proposition as true. So you go to Best Buy, and all of a sudden there's no Queen CDs. So the truth value on that proposition, if I go to Best Buy, then I can buy a Queen CD, right? Ends up being relative to what's on the shelves in the Best Buy. And the truth value of that proposition can be true one day and false the next day.
Right, it diminishes with use, basically.
Yeah, it's relative to the circumstances, and then also
Yeah, relative to the circumstance.
so. And what's really interesting is that so a lot of people don't think of knowledge in the way I do. Usually, they try to say it's a justified belief or justified true belief, or they'll say knowledge is a reliably produced true belief. Um, I contend that both of those two definitions are really the same thing, because I would say if a belief is reliably produced, then what's to say that reliability is not the justification for the belief anyway? So if it's reliably produced, it's justified. So it's just kind of, I hate the distinction that between the justified true belief and reliably produced true belief. I hate that separation there. The way I describe knowledge, right, it would be the recollection, either from memory or by communication, of actions and their consequences. So for
Okay.
example, if you're gonna if you say you know how to fix a bicycle, right? Let's say you say you know that. Well, what you're saying is that either by practical experience of you fixing bicycles in the past, or by reading manuals on how to fix bicycles, right? You know that doing that doing this or that to the brake or the spoke will result in this outcome. So it's the recollection of previous past experiences.
Yeah, all right. That makes sense.
So, but that goes up. That just kind of my little, the way I actually look at the way knowledge is and what we're really trying to get at when we say I know something. And then that, of course, to say we know something, right, would pertain to the metaphysical, because we have to make the inference that yes, this situation is similar to the previous one, and I did these are the actions and consequences on the previous one. So I have basically a metaphysical certitude, so to speak, of me being able to fix this bike now because I've done so in the past, and I recall that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And also, do you know anything about like ontology and stuff like that?
I mean, I've heard all these words a million times, but to be able to spit out a definition, I wouldn't be able to, you know.
Yeah, basically the idea of like I said, the two big questions of that metaphysics tries to answer is what is there and what is that like? Okay, so the idea of ontology, right, is like, yes, we have this dog in the room, okay, but what makes it a dog? Is it really there? What's it made of? What it's like? If I were to touch it, what experiences do I expect? Things like that. So ontology would be like, having to do with, something is made of matter. Matter is its ontology. And what is matter like? Well, matter is like little particles bouncing around and just being held together by forces. So you can easily go into a reductionist idea of ontology, where basically all this is what we call X. It's a combination of these things, and because it has these things, I should be able to do this. I should be able to experience this when I'm around it, when I'm observing it. But the ontology would be like everybody's made up of atoms. Our ontology is particles, things like that. We're made of stardust. That's an ontological.
Right. Okay.
Ontology is more like what something is made of, and it's and it would be like part of metaphysics, because remember what we're trying to answer with metaphysics: what is there, and what it's like. So part of that would be the ontology of what it's made of.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Huh. All right. And what's the second big part? You said there was two big parts, right?
Well, there's two main questions. That's what is there, what exists, right? That's the first one. And the second question is what that something is like. Like, what is, like, is it, do you have the, are you expecting, what I think of it is, what experiences can you do you expect to have happened? Or you expect to happen if this ontology is true?
Okay. Yeah. Well, shit, man. It's almost been an hour, and I got people over. So it's been a great discussion, man. I wish we could have had Luke in here. He would have had some great questions, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, and when I say you can't, I don't see how you get a supernatural metaphysic from natural premises. He would probably shit his pants.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to explain to, especially theists in general, they think that because that the metaphysic, right, is more like, they conflate metaphysic with supernatural. They conflate those two terms. So, however, I try to go through and I'm trying to, no. It's what follows from our physics.
Yeah. That can actually, yeah, I can see that.
A good example of that being, of that idea of metaphysics was actually in the Sean Carroll versus William Lane Craig debate. I think it was at Biola University or something like that. Basically, Sean
Pretty
Carroll
sure. I'm pretty sure I've seen that one. Yeah.
Sean Carroll says, now, our metaphysics must follow from our physics, because that's what it means. that's what metaphysics means. So And if our metaphysics didn't follow from our physics, then pragmatism and practical usage wouldn't be able to settle the physical disputes, which we've understood since late 18, at least from the late 1800s on, that metaphysics isn't something, it's something that it's not something you cannot test. It's something that, like any other belief, has an implication, and so if there's an implication of having a belief, then you can test that belief. Any belief that can't be tested is just or is unfalsifiable, has no utility. So it would have the same utility as
Right. Yeah, and that's a good cutoff point. So, all right.
Okay.
All right, man.
Excellent.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you later.
All right,